Welcome to Security Guy Radio, Black Hat 2016 Las Vegas. What's your name, sir?
My name's Eddie Sheehy. Chuck, it's great to be here.
And what's the name of your company?
I run a company called Nuix.
And you're the CEO?
I'm the CEO. I have been for the last 10 years.
Oh,
I had
10
my
years.
10th anniversary just a couple of months ago.
I noticed your Irish accent. Is it an Irish company?
It's not an Irish company. It's actually an Australian company
Oh,
run by
interesting.
an Irishman.
Okay.
And we have 60% of our business here in the US.
Oh, 60%. That's interesting.
We have about 220 people living here,
Right.
working here. We've got about 80 in Europe and the rest in Australia.
Now, what do you think is the biggest security concern we face as a society, nationally, personally? What worries you the most?
Putting it on one thing is difficult.
Okay. Well, that in itself is one thing. Multiple things, right? I mean,
it is. I mean, to me, the bit that scares me most would be when the virtual world starts to impact the physical world.
good point.
If I was going to put it down to one thing, I don't like the fact that a lot of SCADA systems are connected to the internet. I think that level of connectivity is open to abuse.
Now, that's interesting you should say that. So I had my first computer in 1984. It was 2 floppy drives. Remember the old floppies?
I do.
And I could program it so it would count from 1 to 1,000,000 in like 20 minutes. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I used to take it to the police station, write reports. And my police department thought I was crazy,
Oh, I remember those times.
Yeah, and nobody understood or had use for it in that world. And
you
back
must have
then,
set up their high-tech crime lab.
well, they didn't get it. They still don't get it, most of them, right? But back in the day, we had the HSM, Hierarchy Storage Management. All terminals were dumb. You could, if you took the terminal home, it didn't have any data on it, and it went up to a room that was secured, and that was now the cloud. So I get it. It worries me a little bit that everything's connected. It's convenient, but then everything's connected, and kaboom, it could all go down if you do it that way. So you're with Nuix.com, right?
Nuix.com.
And tell me what they do to contribute to making this a safer place. Let's talk about your vision for the company.
Okay. So Nuix started off actually 16 years ago, 6
Oh,
years
really?
before I turned up.
All right.
And our core technology has always been to understand unstructured information, and we move that into semi-structured, which for us is log files, and structured, which is databases. So we can analyze virtually any volume of data, and it can start off with hard drives, mobile phones, email systems, log files, databases, and correlate information across all of those different data sources. If you think of an average crime committed by 2 or 3 people, there's probably 15 or 20 different data sources within that.
Yeah.
And nowadays, a lot of those crimes actually involve cyber. They're putting on a virus into a network, or they're accessing information that they're not supposed to be inside a threat, I suppose, is a way. And what we've been doing over all these years is reverse engineering all those file types so that we can correlate not just the metadata, but also the text and the embedded information inside it.
Now, it's interesting you say log file. Bring your mic up just a little bit closer from there.
Sorry.
So a log file was considered unstructured. Interesting.
Well,
and
everybody has their own definition.
Yeah.
For us,
It's just a lot of raw data.
It's a lot of raw data,
Yeah.
usually in a text form. But it's unstructured to us would be, here's an Exchange database that has huge amounts of user accounts inside it, and in each one of those will have folders inside it, and each one of those folders will have emails. So some of those emails will have attachments. Some of those attachments will have embedded attachments. To us, that's unstructured. A log file is just what we call semi-structured.
Semi-structured. Okay.
Semi-structured, because there is a structure to it.
Yeah.
And we just have to parse it out.
So Nuix is not artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's really a super duper relational database that digs, puts it in a structure, and creates, how would I describe it? Gives you an answer for what it means.
Exactly.
Is that how I describe it? Right.
We bring those correlations and facts up to the investigator.
Right.
And it could be, I want to see everything that has numbers in it. It could be credit card numbers. It could be locations, IP addresses, email addresses, web environments. And depending on what you're actually trying to achieve, we funnel that up to the top, and we allow you to pick, well, that's the information I want to look at, and that could be the 6 documents that you want to look at out of 1,000,000.
Now, you started this 16 years ago. That's quite a vision 16 years ago. Not many people were thinking about that 16 years ago.
I would say that the guys who started us off, they had a broad vision, and they stumbled into it slowly but surely in the next couple of years.
Right.
So absolutely they wanted to create a really fast processing engine. They wanted to be able to understand the content and context of email at the time. That was the holy grail. If you go back,
that's right. I remember we had companies that came in, and maybe it was your company. It's possible at Fox, where they called them email management systems, because I got all these emails on Microsoft and I can't make either hair of them. And these systems allowed us to dig into that. That's very interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
That's exactly where we came from. But, and as the years rolled on, we needed to correlate information from emails to log files.
Right.
And then from log files to structured databases. Because there could be information inside that structured database that relates to that log file, which gives you context to why that person wrote or said that thing in that email at that time.
Right.
Or put it on social media or whatever he did. So our job in the last couple of years has actually changed much more into telling stories.
Very good way to put it.
What happened 5 minutes before, 5 minutes after a certain thing happened.
Well, to an investigator, that's relevant. It's highly relevant. Where to an IT guy, it may not be relevant. They have a different function.
Absolutely.
Right? They're looking for the one thing that they need to do to turn the file off, put a password on it, whatever. And I don't mean to downplay their knowledge. It's just a different discipline. So you guys work with an investigator mentality and merge in the IT part of it.
So let me give you an example. You have a USB stick.
Right.
We take a look at it, and there's going to be a lot of different questions you might have about that USB stick. First off, what content does it have? Where have I seen it on the network before? Okay, just by searching the log files and information that we've already processed, we can show you that it's been seen in 4 different computers over the last month.
Oh, interesting. That's a thief right there, possibly. That's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can see who's logged on the computer at that time. Is it the same person in multiple different places? What information was downloaded 2 minutes before that time when the USB stick was plugged in? How can you link that information to that user? Looking at the log files, accessing that floor at that time, or what information was sent to the printer. By being able to correlate all that information together, we can tell a really good story about how that information was exfiltrated.
Now, how does Nuix handle the law enforcement prosecution side? In other words, you have to tell this story in a way that creates probable cause, maybe violates a code section. California has some very strict what's called personally identifiable information laws, and if I'm going to prove you stole something, there's a burden of proof, right?
Yep.
So what tools do you give the investigator to use that? Because it's not always easy to translate this sort of data into a police report, so to speak.
We do a lot. We have law enforcement clients all around the world, including a lot in the States. For us, it's about bubbling up the information so that the investigator can look at the information that's relevant to them very quickly.
Okay.
And it could be a child pornography case. It could be whatever it is. We will extract all of the information that we know that most law enforcement are interested in.
Right.
And by bubbling it up the top, showing it pictorially, and then allowing you to drill into that information very quickly, it allows you to just look at the information you want.
Does it help put it in a presentation format, so to speak,
we
chronologically?
We output it in a variety of different ways.
Right.
And our new tools, analytics and intelligence, will also allow you to video it, so you can see how you
create a video of your investigation, what you found. Interesting.
Exactly.
All right.
But you'll be able to tag, you'll be able to comment, you'll be able to structure, you'll be able to flag, all of that as you're actually making the investigations as well. So,
in other words, I look at this child pornography evidence, I flag that for the video later.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Or getting back to the USB example, so as you find that there's 4 different, it's been plugged into 4 different computers on the network over the last month. You note that in your notes, you flag it, and then you look at who the users are on each of those machines. And you can see, well, there's only one person who's actually used all 4 of them in the last month. You can put that note down there, make it a tag, so you can always go back to that person's name again, and we wrap that up as a package, and then you can use that as your evidence.
So how do you get my friend Paul, who's retired, who does not use Quicken to balance his checkbook? He still uses the statement they mail to him. He won't participate. Cops are a little behind in these sort of things sometimes, right? Is it a hard sell for Nuix to come into a detective bureau and say, look, here's what we do? Do you get the eyes rolled up in the head saying, wait a minute, that's too complicated? Or are you finding the younger cops now kind of get this computer stuff and they're embracing it?
It's a bit of both. I mean, some agencies around the world absolutely are embracing it hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Because they have to.
You have to. That's right.
You,
Eventually, you got to do it.
There was a report that came out of the UK last week that said, computer crime is bigger than every other type of crime added together.
Oh, I bet it is. Absolutely.
So you can't ignore 50% of crime anymore. So, yeah, we've crossed that Rubicon. How do we actually make Paul... I'm smiling because Paul Slater is an individual who runs all of our investigation thought leadership.
Right.
Amazing man, Paul Slater. And it's his job to make sure that the product is as simple to use as possible. I go back to what I said before. So whatever type of case it is, we've had experience of it. We've been doing this now for so long. So it's our job to provide you with the facts that help you make your case.
Yeah.
So,
and the investigators are part of that programming.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know what needs to be programmed. They tell the programmer, program it this way so it looks like this for the cop.
But it's the ability for them to use their intellect beyond that. So let's just say I've provided you with 5 credit card numbers that are inside this data set. That might give you the information. Well, then the investigator will say, well, I want to know where else that credit card has been. Can you show me which emails that was in? Can you show me who that individual has been talking to before? So it doesn't take away from the need for that investigator to use his noodle. He's got to be able to use his head.
Right.
But it's our job to provide them with the first series of information at his fingertips and then allow him to very simply use his intellect to go from there to finish the case.
That's a good point. I talked to a lot of IT guys, and over the years, they've always told me this. Look, Chuck, you can tell me how to make the computer do something. What I don't get is how do you know that? In other words, you're programming it to catch a bad guy. I know code, I know that stuff, but I don't know bad guys. It's a different discipline, right? Cops know bad guys. Cops anticipate behavior. They understand that part of it. So this partnership is brilliant, and it needs to happen. It should have happened 15 years ago, but I'm glad to say that you're telling me it's happening more and more. That's important.
Let me give you a really great example. It's happened in LA about a year and a bit ago. We went on a ride-along with a 3-letter agency, and they it was going to a drug bust.
Right.
The warrant was given anyway, and they went in, and there was a bunch of people inside in the drug house. There was also a bucket full of burner phones, 60 of them. So we plugged them all into our program, took all the information from them.
Oh, excellent.
And we were able to show the timeline of when one phone was dropped and when the next one was brought on.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And they had a process that every month they'd get rid of their phone. But they just put it in the bucket.
Kept to that, right. So you didn't get rid of it, exactly, yeah.
And then on the first day of every month, they'd text the same person. Basically, they'd text their girlfriends what their new telephone number was. And this would go on anyway. And we were able to show all of the texts, all of the information flows between the drug dealers and their clients overall the entire period. And because they're all geolocated, we were able to then put it up on a mapping environment and show how it was all located at that house.
Right.
And then this again is the law enforcement using their knowledge.
Right.
The guy said, can you tell me if there's any other hotspots within 3 to 5 miles from this location?
Oh, right.
So he said, okay, cool. We put our fingers in. A couple of seconds later, there was another hotspot. So they got a warrant. They went around to that house and went in, and there was a lady there. And they asked the lady whether she had ever been associated with these individuals or whether she'd ever been back to that particular house. And she said, no, don't know who you're talking about, never been there. So we got her phone and we plugged it in. And God bless us, some of them aren't that clever.
Right.
There was a selfie that she took of her, guns, drugs, and money in the background, geotagged back to the last house.
She's like the hub for everybody, yeah.
Well, she was one of their girlfriends.
Oh, girlfriend. Oh, yeah, the girlfriend, yeah.
So there's an example of the law enforcement officer asking the question, the tools did the work, and everybody went to jail.
Eddie, we're out of time. It goes by fast, doesn't
It
it?
certainly does.
Eddie Sheehy, Nuix.com,
Nuix.com.
Nuix.com.
We're the people who are behind the Panama Papers, and I can tell you that in the last 3 weeks, I know that we've been involved in at least 3 cases where it was terrorist cells being taken down.
Oh, excellent. Might be a couple email servers we need you to look into eventually, too. See what happens with that. Thanks for coming on, Security
I know
Guy
what you're
Radio.
talking about.
All right.